Hello, Calvary Bible Church, and welcome to week 9 of our Bible reading. This week we will continue in Leviticus, and we will look at Matthew 10 and 14, Mark 4 and 5. I know that as we've been reading through this, you guys are looking to remember and remembering to see Jesus in the text. Continue with that. He's intertwined in just about everything, and so if you can find those touch points, so to speak, it helps with your study because we know from John 1:1 that it is Jesus. Jesus is the Word, and the Word is for us. And so we want to make sure that we focus on that as we study. So let's get into the Old Testament, continue with Leviticus. These Old Testament law books sometimes are difficult to read. There's a lot of information. A lot of it connects to the New Testament. A lot of it connects to giving us an understanding of this progress to getting to our salvation. And so as we read through the text, we see some more of the sins and the offerings that are be given for those sins. And we see a portion of the offerings that are set aside for the priests, kind of like their portion of their 10%, so to speak, that comes from the offerings goes to those priests, because remember, they're not going to get a city, or they're not going to get land, they're not going to get any of those things. They're going to take a portion from everybody, and so this is setting up for that portion for them. We also see God separating the clean and unclean animals. In fact, cleanliness and clean is a lot of what we read through as we read through this text this week. And I find it interesting when you read through that. I remember, studying that and thinking, man, this is a lot of information. But if you think about it, when you're traveling in the wilderness and there's that many people, there needs to be some rules about how we keep ourselves clean. How do we keep pestilence, infection, disease out of the camps? And so God lays this out. He lays this out for them. So if you're unclean in this matter, there's a certain amount of time. You wash yourself, et cetera, et cetera. Even to the point of our homes. They talk about homes and how that works. And so it's important to read through this and then think about this. And this is the thing that I thought was interesting. In the mid-19th century, there started to be this push for washing of the hands. In fact, we know that from that point forward, it became more important all the time to wash your hands. And what happened was there was this Hungarian doctor in 1846, I believe, 44, 46, that time frame. His name was Eganz Semmelweis, and he observed that there was a lot of significantly less mortality rate in the maternity ward than there was in the actual portion of the hospital there in Hungary. And as you read the text, I got this from the History Channel as I was reading through this. It's interesting because they made this note that there was less people passing away in the maternity ward as opposed to the other part of the hospital. And one thing that they attributed to, this was part of their testing process, is they knew that there was a priest that would walk through, and whenever somebody had passed away, and he'd ring this bell declaring that somebody had passed away. And the thought was that that bell ringer would go through the maternity ward every so often. And when that would happen, the thought was that people would panic, thinking that they were dying, and so they would pass. We know that's not true. That had nothing to do with it. But in their logic, they were testing everything. And what they realized is that doctors would do autopsies, and then they would go immediately and work on patients, and there would be no washing of the hands and no cleanliness at all. And they were literally passing on disease and infection and other things. And the simple task, and God laid this out to the Jews as they traveled to the wilderness: clean yourself. make sure you're clean. And if you touch something that's unclean, get clean. And so all these years later, after Moses writes this in the text, after God gives this to Moses, we see this coming to play. You know, it's important to stay clean. It's important to be clean. It's important to have a healthy cleaning routine. And so as you read through that, think about that. And, you know, God had this incredible plan, and sometimes humanity is a little bit behind. And so interesting read this week. All right, and so we get into the New Testament, and we look at Mark, and Mark's kind of a continuation of what we've been reading the last couple of weeks. So we cover some of the same parables, we cover some of the same messages that we've read, and so read through that, and you'll see this connection. And as always, there's different angles as each one of the different writers of the Gospels write down the story of Jesus, but they all are 100% God's word, and so we can see God's hand through all of it. Matthew 10 continues to focus on the kingdom and the kingship of Jesus, and we need to look for Jesus as the director of our commission, the Great Commission. It was ironic. We talked about this with TNT last night, that we all have a commission that's given to us by God. And so Jesus kind of lays it out here in Matthew chapter 10. We're supposed to help those people that have great needs. It's going to be dangerous. We might fall into dangerous times. In fact, the study that we had last night was Paul. You know, he's given this statement to the king, and he basically says, "I'm following God's command, and I'm going into Jerusalem and Judea and all the world, and I'm teaching, and because of that, they keep throwing me in jail." And so that's going to happen as we share the gospel of God, and as we share more about what it is that we know and love about God. There's sometimes we can be persecuted for that. We could be betrayed. We can even be hated for that. And the enemy's always going to try to tempt us in ways to take us away from that. And so as you read through that text, look for those markers in there. Matthew 14, we come to the death of John the Baptist. And even we as we read the text, we even know the king kind of was grieved over this, but his oath was his oath. We see Jesus healing. He's doing a lot of healing, but he's also doing a lot of resting. Rest is important in our life, and Jesus would take time away, and he would just talk to his Father in heaven and rest. We see that Jesus continues to flee when he needs to. He's being persecuted for his words. He's being persecuted for healing people, helping people, and we see him casting out demons, and so this whole time he's focusing on his Father in heaven. And as we do and go about God's work, we should always be focused on what God has for us and what Jesus has taught us. And you know, maybe this week just wash your hands extra couple times or something. Hey, have a great week, and we'll meet again soon. God bless you all.